Welcome to slide set 1. In this particular slide set, we are going to talk about water-soluble vitamins. So first, we will classify the vitamins. Then we will review the different water-soluble vitamins. And as part of that review, we will look at the source of these vitamins, talk about the metabolism of some of the important water-soluble vitamins, relate to the function of these vitamins, and try to understand their clinical importance. So if I have to classify vitamins, I will classify them broadly in two classes. One, that are soluble in fat and known as fat-soluble vitamins. And in this particular group, we have vitamins A, D, E, and K. And these particular vitamins we will deal in slide set 2. However, in this particular slide, as you can see here, the key function of the fat-soluble vitamins are summarized. The second broad class of vitamins are the water-soluble vitamins, and we can further classify them into vitamins that are involved in energy metabolism, among which we have B1, B2, B3, biotin, and pantothenic acid. Water-soluble vitamins that are involved in metabolism of amino acids. And here we will talk about vitamin B6 in detail. Then we have water-soluble vitamins that are involved in RBC and neural development, where we will focus on folic acid and cobalamin or vitamin B12. And of course, we have ascorbic acid and vitamin C as the one of the other classes of water-soluble vitamins, which is involved in collagen synthesis. So let us start with vitamin B1, which is also known as thiamine. The most important source of thiamine are whole grains, especially unpolished rice. And the active form of vitamin B1 is thiamine pyrophosphate. And if you remember your lectures from biochemistry, thiamine pyrophosphate acts as a cofactor for pyruvate dehydrogenase, which is responsible for the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl coenzyme A. And acetyl coenzyme A feeds into the TCA cycle. And the other important enzyme where TPP acts as the cofactor is transketolase, which is involved in the pentose phosphate pathway. Now, deficiency of thiamine generally occurs in alcoholics because in case of alcoholics, the gastric mucosa is damaged, as a result of which there is decreased absorption of thiamine, and therefore alcoholics suffer from thiamine deficiency, which is manifested in the form of a particular disorder known as WKS or Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which has where there is severe neurological impairment. Now, in the exam, often it is asked which are the enzymes that require thiamine for their thiamine as a cofactor for their activity, and one of the easy mnemonic to remember these three enzymes is ATP. A for alpha ketoglutarate dehydrogenase, an enzyme that participates in the TCA cycle. Transketolase, as I mentioned previously, an enzyme in the pentose phosphate pathway. And we have pyruvate dehydrogenase complex, which is an enzyme responsible for converting pyruvate to acetyl coenzyme A. And if you remember the lectures from biochemistry, you know that the mechanism of action of alpha ketoglutarate dehydrogenase and the pyruvate dehydrogenase complex are more or less similar, except that the substrate and products are different. Now, apart from people who are suffering from, apart from alcoholics, you will also observe vitamin B1 to be deficient in people who have undergone metabolic surgery, and this particular condition is known as bariatric Wernicke. And also because B1 is a water soluble vitamin, due to chronic diuretic therapy, there is increased excretion of vitamin B1, which leads to its deficiency. Further, there is maternal thiamine deficiency, which leads to deficiency of the particular vitamin in breastfed infants, and this particular condition is known as infantile beriberi. Now, there are other forms of beriberi. Broadly, they are classified into two classes, wet beriberi and dry beriberi. Just for information, wet beriberi affects the cardiovascular system, whereas dry beriberi is mostly affecting the nervous system. The next water-soluble vitamin is vitamin B2 or riboflavin, and the major source of vitamin B2 is milk. However, you need to remember that vitamin B2 is photosensitive, so if milk is exposed for prolonged periods to light, there is degradation of this particular vitamin. Now, riboflavin is converted to flavin adenine dinucleotide and flavin mononucleotides, which are called the active forms of the vitamin. And if you remember from your lectures in biochemistry, FAD is a cofactor associated with the succinate dehydrogenase complex, which is involved in conversion of succinate to fumarate in the TCA cycle or the citric acid cycle. Flavin mononucleotide, of course, is an important component of the electron transport chain, which is responsible for oxidative phosphorylation. Riboflavin deficiency is usually seen in severely malnourished individuals and also in pure vegans because they are not taking any kind of dairy products. And as I mentioned before, milk is one of the richest sources of riboflavin. So if there is lack of intake of meat or dairy products, the person suffers from vitamin B2 deficiency. We move on to the next water-soluble vitamin, which is known as niacin, vitamin B3 or nicotinic acid. Niacin, the richest source of niacin is meat, and also niacin can be derived from whole grains and food sources that are rich in tryptophan. In fact, if you look at the metabolism of niacin, excess amino acid tryptophan is metabolized to niacin, and this actually supplies 10% of the recommended daily allowance of niacin. There are two active forms of niacin, NAD+, which is primarily involved in catabolic reactions, for example, glycolysis, if you remember from your biochemistry lecture, and NADP+, which is primarily involved in anabolic reactions, for example, fatty acid synthesis. Clinically, niacin or nicotinic acid is a lipid-lowering agent. However, it is prescribed mostly because it has the ability to increase the levels of high-density lipoprotein. As high-density lipoprotein is responsible for the clearance of cholesterol because it carries cholesterol from the peripheral tissues to the liver and is involved in reverse cholesterol transport. Therefore, increasing its level lowers cholesterol in the physiological environment. And I believe you have studied this when you studied lipoprotein metabolism. If you haven't studied lipoprotein metabolism, you can quickly refresh these concepts through the lectures on biochemistry which are available on the YouTube channel where these lectures are also uploaded. So this is a particular study that I wanted to show to you where it is shown that increasing the doses with increasing doses of different forms of niacin, there is elevation in the levels of HDL. So in this particular study, they used two forms of niacin, immediate release niacin called IR and sustained release niacin. So you can see here with immediate release niacin, there is rapid elevation of HDL with increasing doses, whereas with sustained release niacin, although there is increase, it takes some time. The problem with immediate release niacin is that it causes flushing because niacin binds to G protein receptors and increases the levels of prostaglandins in the physiological environment. The deficiency of niacin leads to a condition known as pellagra, and this deficiency can be because of limited dietary intake of niacin. However, it can also be associated with diseases where there is decrease in bioavailability of tryptophan because it is excreted out in the urine and stool, a condition known as Hartnupp's disease, which is a genetic condition, or if tryptophan is excessively used, for example, in carcinoid syndrome. So, the early symptoms of pellagra in general involves loss of appetite, abdominal pain and vomiting, but most telltale sign of pellagra is the presence of bright red glossitis, which is found in the skin, and you will see this in the form of a rash that is pigmented, particularly in the skin areas exposed to sunlight, as you can see here in this particular part of the slide. And this particular signature, which is known as Cazal's necklace, tells you that the person is suffering from advanced stages of pellagra, and if dietary supplementation of niacin is not introduced, there can be detrimental consequences. Primarily, manifestations of pellagra can be summarized into 4 Ds. First, there is dermatitis, where you will see Cazal's necklace. Then there is diarrhea. Then dementia, that is loss of memory and other neurological functions, and ultimately death. As I mentioned, if there is an imbalance in the use of tryptophan, it also may lead to pellagra because tryptophan is the precursor for the formation of niacin. So the first condition we call the Hartnupp's disease. It's an autosomal recessive disease where there is a defect in the intestinal and renal reabsorption of neutral amino acids, and one of the neutral amino acids, if you remember from your amino acid lecture, is tryptophan. Hartnupp's disease is associated with photodermatitis, and you can see here and in this particular part of the figure, and cerebellar ataxia. The way Hartnupp's disease is diagnosed is to examine the urine of the patient who is suspected with the disorder to look for neutral amino acids. In carcinoid syndrome, there is increased conversion of tryptophan to serotonin, and this produces flushing, as you can see here in a patient who is suffering from the carcinoid syndrome. And also, because of the increased production of serotonin, people with carcinoid syndrome suffer from diarrhea. And this syndrome is because of a carcinoid tumor in the small intestine that often metastasizes into the liver. Now, metastatic nodules secrete serotonin into the hepatic vein tributaries, which actually is responsible for the syndrome. The next water-soluble vitamin is pantothenic acid, which is present in a variety of foods. It is a uh, it is present in pantothenic acid is present in most of the food that we take regularly, so the deficiency of pantothenic acid is quite uncommon. Pantothenic acid is an important component of coenzyme A, and if you remember from your biochemistry lecture, that this particular coenzyme A is part of the fatty acid synthase complex, so pantothenic acid is involved in fatty acid synthesis. We move on to pyridoxine or vitamin B6, which is one of the important water-soluble vitamins present in whole grains, mostly eggs, meats, fish, and nuts. And you need to know that pyridoxal phosphate is the active form of the vitamin. Now, pyridoxal phosphate, which is the active form of the vitamin, is involved in amino acid metabolism. If you remember, we took these particular enzymes when we talked about transamination in the metabolism of amino acids in biochemistry. It is also a cofactor for a particular enzyme that is involved in heme synthesis, and deficiency of pyridoxine therefore leads to a specific form of anemia known as sideroblastic anemia. Pyridoxine is involved in the synthesis of neurotransmitters such as gamma-aminobutyric acid, serotonin, and norepinephrine. There is a particular lecture on specialized products from amino acids where I have extensively talked about the role of pyridoxine in the synthesis of neurotransmitters. If you want to have a browse through this particular lecture, you can have a browse through. Pyridoxine also acts as a cofactor for the following reactions: decarboxylation, which is seen in the conversion of histidine to histamine; glycogenolysis, if you remember, glycogen phosphorylase uses pyridoxal phosphate as one of the cofactors; deamination reactions, such as the conversion of serine to pyruvate and ammonia. And another important fact is that it acts as a cofactor for the conversion of neutral amino acid tryptophan to niacin. You need to remember that there are certain drugs that bind to the carbonyl group of pyridoxal phosphate and therefore deplete the particular enzyme in the physiological milieu. And one of these drugs is isoniazid, which is commonly used for the treatment of tuberculosis. So this drug binds to the carboxyl group of pyridoxal phosphate, which is derived from vitamin B6. And because of deficiency of pyridoxal phosphate, there is peripheral neuropathy. Therefore, it is recommended that whenever this particular medication is used by a particular patient, the patient should also take vitamin B6 as supplement in the diet or in the form of tablets or capsules. We move on to cobalamin, which is a cobalt containing water-soluble vitamin, mostly present in meats, shellfish, poultry, eggs, and dairy products. Again, pure vegans lack vitamin B12 because they are not taking any dairy products, and therefore pure vegans who are pregnant or who are breastfeeding require vitamin B12 supplements to prevent anemia from developing in the infant. As you can see here in this particular part of the figure, cobalamin removes a methyl group from N-methyl tetrahydrofolate to form tetrahydrofolate, and this tetrahydrofolate is used to synthesize DTMP from DUMP, which is required for DNA synthesis. Also, if you look at this particular part of the reaction, as cobalamin gets converted to methylcobalamin and back to cobalamin, there is a conversion of homocysteine to methionine. Now, methionine, if you remember from our amino acid lecture, is the precursor for cysteine residues. But most importantly, if this particular conversion of homocysteine to methionine doesn't occur, there is a buildup of homocysteine in the body. Therefore, deficiency of cobalamin leads to homocysteine buildup, and homocysteine has been shown to be atherogenic in nature. So what does homocysteine do? It actually injures the arterial wall and initiates a cascade of reactions that you have learned in atherosclerosis and increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. Therefore, nowadays, homocysteine is often used as a marker for the detection of cardiovascular disease. Further, cobalamin has an important neurological function. If you remember, we talked about fatty acid metabolism, where we talked about odd chain fatty acid metabolism. In odd chain fatty acid metabolism, to just quickly revise, propionyl coenzyme A is the end product, which is converted to methylmalonyl coenzyme A. Now, cobalamin is an important cofactor for methylmalonyl coenzyme A mutase, which converts methylmalonyl coenzyme A into succinyl coenzyme A. Therefore, odd chain fatty acid metabolite can go into the citric acid cycle for the generation of ATP. So, if there is a deficiency of cobalamin or vitamin B12, there is an increase in methylmalonyl coenzyme A, which is converted to methylmalonic acid, and this methylmalonic acid creates a proximal enzyme block which increases the concentration of propionyl coenzyme A, and this leads to demyelination of spinal cord. Predominantly and to some extent to the peripheral nerves and the brain. So if I look at it as a collective, there will be subacute combined degeneration, peripheral neuropathy, and dementia. So cobalamin deficiency leads to neurological impairment or neurological insufficiency, and this is the particular mechanism. This mechanism is important because often it is asked in the assessment. The other thing that I wanted to mention, because this has been a focus of interest, especially in biochemical research currently, that vitamin B12 complexes with R factor in the saliva. R factor complex prevents degradation of vitamin B12 by the stomach acid. Now, there is another factor called intrinsic factor that is synthesized in the parietal cells located in the fundus of the stomach. And in pernicious anemia, where the parietal cells are destroyed, there is a deficiency of intrinsic factor that leads to vitamin B12 deficiency. And I will just tell you how this deficiency occurs. So what happens is that the pancreatic enzymes, they cleave off the R factor, which allows vitamin B12 to bind to the intrinsic factor in the duodenum. So once the R factor B12 complex passes from the stomach into the duodenum, the pancreatic enzymes will cleave off the R factor such that the B12 can bind to the intrinsic factor. So if the person is suffering from chronic pancreatitis, where there is insufficiency of pancreatic enzymes, there is malabsorption of vitamin B12. Similarly, bacterial overgrowth destroys the B12-IF complex, and this may also lead to deficiency of vitamin B12. Further, fish tapeworm uses vitamin B12 in its metabolism. So if a person is infected with fish tapeworm, he or she may also exhibit functions related to vitamin B12 insufficiency. The vitamin B12-IF complex binds to IF receptors in the terminal ileum and is absorbed. So if a person is suffering from terminal ileal disease such as Crohn's disease, there will be insufficiency of vitamin B12 functionality. Now, once vitamin B12 is absorbed, it is converted to transcobalamin 2 in the plasma, delivered to metabolically active cells which require cobalamin for their function, or they are stored in the liver, and the liver can store up to 6 to 9 years of supply of cobalamin. So, as vitamin B12 is one of the important water-soluble vitamins, I thought of summarizing the causes of deficiency for this particular water-soluble vitamin. So, people who are on pure vegan diet, they will suffer from vitamin B12 deficiency because they are not taking any milk or dairy products. People suffering from pernicious anemia because there is destruction of parietal cells, there is no intrinsic factors that is being synthesized. As a result, they will suffer from vitamin B12 deficiency. Similarly, people who are suffering from chronic pancreatitis will also suffer from vitamin B12 deficiency because pancreatic enzymes are not there, or they are impaired in the secretion of these enzymes are impaired such that the R factor is not cleaved off, and therefore absorption of vitamin B12 doesn't happen. Then bacterial overgrowth, where the B12-IF complex is destroyed. Also, people who are suffering from fish tapeworm infection can also have deficiency of vitamin B, as this particular parasite uses vitamin B12 for its metabolism. As the absorption of vitamin B12 takes place in the terminal ileum, therefore, people who are suffering from terminal ileal disease such as Crohn's disease can also have insufficiency of vitamin B12 function. We move on to another water-soluble vitamin called folic acid, often called folate. So folic acid, the rich source of folic acid are green leafy vegetables and liver. However, they are also present in legumes, whole grain cereals and yeast. Now, what is the function of folate? It is one of the important components of tetrahydrofolate. We talked about this molecule when we talked about cobalamin. And tetrahydrofolate receives a methylene group to produce N-methylene tetrahydrofolate. So this is the particular molecule where it receives a methylene group from serine. As you can see here, serine gets converted to glycine. This methylene group is transferred to DUMP to produce DTMP, and therefore this is an important step required for the synthesis of DNA. The enzyme that catalyzes this particular reaction is thymidylate synthase. So one can say that folic acid deficiency impairs DNA replication due to shortage of purine nucleotides and thiamine. And I believe they would have talked about this particular process when they talked about nucleotide metabolism in the course of molecular biology. So you can just quickly revise those particular notes which will help you to understand this process better. Drugs such as fluorouracil, a chemotherapeutic drug, binds to thymidylate synthase and irreversibly blocks this process. And since DNA synthesis is completely impaired in the presence of the drug, cancer cells are not able to replicate and their growth stops. But you need to also remember that apart from cancer cells, this particular drug will also affect the DNA synthesis in normal cells as well. Now, 2 hydrogens from tetrahydrofolate are used in the formation of DTMP, resulting in the formation of dihydrofolate, as you can see here, and this particular reaction is catalyzed by dihydrofolate reductase. Now, methotrexate, which is also a chemotherapeutic drug used for the treatment of cancer, and trimethoprim, which is an antibiotic, inhibit this particular enzyme dihydrofolate reductase. And because the DNA synthetic machinery is getting impaired, replication of cancer cells, especially for methotrexate, is attenuated. But you need to also remember that apart from cancer cells, the same drug will also have detrimental effects on normal cells. Folic acid is ingested in polyglutamate form. Now, polyglutamates are converted to monoglutamates in the jejunum by intestinal conjugase. So, if any drug binds to intestinal conjugase, it will detrimentally affect folic acid metabolism. Folate monoglutamate is absorbed in the jejunum, and most importantly, you should remember that folate monoglutamate absorption is blocked by alcohol and oral contraceptives, which leads to folic acid deficiency. Therefore, if a lady is on oral contraceptives, one should carefully monitor their folic acid levels because it can have detrimental consequences. We come to another water-soluble vitamin, biotin. If you remember, we talked about this particular vitamin which acts as a cofactor for carboxylase reactions, especially pyruvate carboxylase or acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase or propionyl coenzyme A carboxylase. Now, pyruvate carboxylase, we talked about this particular enzyme and biotin when we talked about gluconeogenesis. Now, biotin deficiency is mostly caused if a person takes raw eggs because this contains avidin which binds to biotin, and therefore it is recommended that a person should not take raw eggs. Since avidin is a protein, if it is heated up, it is denatured and therefore the binding of avidin to biotin doesn't take place. Also, biotin is synthesized by our intestinal flora. So, if a person is on broad spectrum antibiotics, the synthesis of biotin inside the body is attenuated. We come to vitamin C, which is a water-soluble vitamin. I believe you all know that vitamin C is present in large quantities in citrus fruits such as lemons, oranges. Now, the important function of vitamin C is hydroxylation of lysine to proline residues during collagen synthesis. We talked about this when we talked about amino acids in biochemistry. It is also an antioxidant and inactivates hydroxy radicals, reduces non-heme iron from plants to ferrous state for absorption in the duodenum, keeps tetrahydrofolate in its reduced form, cofactor in the conversion of dopamine to norepinephrine in catecholamine synthesis. It is also an important cofactor which I have not mentioned in synthesis of bile salts, which you already know probably when you have taken the enterohepatic circulation of bile. Lack of vitamin C leads to a condition called scurvy, where a person observes bleeding gums, and this particular disease often is more common in smokers, especially because they suffer from a deficiency of vitamin C, because the vitamin or increased levels of ascorbic acid or vitamin C is required to reduce or neutralize the free radicals that are produced from cigarette smoke. Now, most of the water-soluble vitamins which we talked about do not lead to hypervitaminosis if they are taken in increased concentrations, except for ascorbic acid or vitamin C, where excess amounts of vitamin C can lead to renal calculi. Often it is asked why smokers suffer from bleeding gums, and the answer to that is because of the deficiency of vitamin C, as increased levels of vitamin C are required to neutralize the free radicals in smokers, and these free radicals are present in the cigarette smoke. This is a cheat sheet for the symptoms and sign of deficiency for the different water-soluble vitamins. I'm not going to read through it, and neither I'm going to ask you to memorize this, but it kind of summarizes the different pathological conditions which you may observe if a particular water-soluble vitamin is deficient. When we go to slide set 2, you will see that there is another column which is related to hypervitaminosis. In case of water-soluble vitamins, as I said, because they can be easily excreted out in urine, one does not observe hypervitaminosis, except in case of vitamin C, where excess amounts may lead to the formation of calculi. So that's the end of slide set 1. In slide set 2, we will talk about fat-soluble vitamins. So keep listening and try to take notes, especially the one aspects of metabolism which you might want to revise. Please go back and listen to the other videos on the YouTube channel if you need to revise some of the older concepts of biochemistry. Thank you very much for listening and have a wonderful day.